My word, vertical.
My word, complain. I'm going to do a favor, I guess, for Mark here, and we're going to talk about something he's more familiar with. Let's talk about sports. He has a whole podcast about sports. Go my favorite sports team, you know?
I do. Bob, I'll give you a bonus point if you've listened to Go My Favorite Sports Team.
Yeah, I've listened to Go. I listened to, the most recent one I listened to is the non-competitive sports one, where you talked about marching band and cheerleading and stuff.
Ooh.
I thought that was interesting.
Go on.
It's just a complicated thing, and the ultimate conclusion that you guys landed on, spoilers, you talked a lot about how it's like the issue of if marching band is a sport, because I did marching band, and I would say, for me personally, it does seem like a sport. It's very competitive. You're both competing against yourself to get better at music, at the performance, both physical and like, you know, artistic, but also you compete against other bands. My band would do, I don't know, probably half dozen or more competitions over the course of a season. But and you guys ultimately were like, it doesn't really matter if it is a sport or isn't a sport. It's kind of a personal classification. I think it is important that it is a sport, though, because marching band is something that enriches kids' lives, and it deserves the respect in terms of institutional respect from the school and the district as a sport for funding purposes, as well as for like, I don't know, for like standing purposes, because the band program and the arts programs in general get denigrated a lot, right?
Yeah.
If you get a big budget cut, the first thing that's going to get cut is the arts, which usually includes orchestra and band. And it frequently means that, oh, we can't do marching band anymore because we don't have the money for it. Or, oh, we can't feel, you know, now we can't have flag corps members, which is a big part of marching band that makes it look, you know, more exciting and interesting. And like part of that is because, oh, well, it's not a sport, it's just the arts. But I think it's important for things that are sort of on the fringe. If it was a sport, if it was funded by the athletic boosters or funded by the district in the same way that football, basketball, the big popular sports are, it would enrich the experience for the hundreds of kids in each district, thousands of kids, depending on how big your district is, who are in the music programs, who might be in marching band or might otherwise be performing. And like sitting on stage performing music is not a sport. Clearly that's an art. But marching band being a sport just buys more legitimacy for it. And I felt like that's a really important thing that you sort of, in Tyler's conclusion, sort of he dismissed because he was like, oh, it's not a sport. It's not very competitive. But I would say it arguably is, and that there's importance beyond the definition of a sport and why it should or should not be a sport, that I think that's an important thing about it. That's just my opinion. I don't know if that's right. But I thought that was a very interesting topic.
I've always found it weird that people whine and moan about like what is or isn't a sport, because like even on ESPN, things like World Series of Poker and stuff would play, and it's like, okay, well, if that's on there, what isn't? Like, I guess the difference between a competition and a sport is kind of lost on me, but
there's a lot of great discussion about that, especially in that episode, the non-competitive sports episode of Go My Favorite Sports Team.
Yeah.
And in like some of the primer episodes and stuff. But that's a whole other podcast that we don't have to delve into. I just thought it was interesting.
Yeah, but what about how high they jump?
In band?
Yeah, what about how high they jump?
They jump a little bit, probably not super high.
How can they be a sport if there's no testing for their jump height?
well, your jump matters more in basketball, but in basketball, the first thing I think of after playing is how much people moan and groan and whine and whatever to the refs. Like, oh, this was a foul, and then they don't get the call to go their way, and they just keep going.
I always think that's silly. All sports do that, but some like soccer, especially like European soccer, they're so bad about that.
About what?
Moaning about everything that happens to the ref, and just like crying and or taking a dive and then being like, what? Like he didn't touch you and you fell down. What do you want?
And then after the game, they're just sitting there at their press conferences, like talking about like the ref's call, the lack of a call, and they're
making excuses, really.
Yeah, excuses.
Yeah. If only they jumped higher.
I mean, jumping higher certainly might avoid getting fouled, I guess. If that's what you're getting at, Mark.
Yeah, I think there's a correlation.
What do you do if you jump high, you get fouled, and like the ref doesn't see it? What do you do to him?
You jump higher.
Same thing. You complain, I guess.
Oh, you sure do. God, it helps a lot.
Yeah, but what about jumping?
I'm sorry. Did I say the wrong thing?
No, you said exactly the right thing. That's what people do.
Why do you sound so sad?
I just think you're dismissing the jumping conclusion.
What about the jumping?
Yeah, what about the jumping?
Well, I'm just saying, if you know, marching band people jump more, they'd be better.
Well,
might lose more teeth.
We spent a lot of time on this topic. It was a good topic, but I think it's time to move on.
Okay.
I do. I think that you go listen to my favorite sports team if you guys want to listen to more about.
Go listen to my favorite sporting events, whatever the hell that podcast is called.